Hey everyone, welcome back to First Hand Globetrotting. I'm back up in the air and headed over to Europe. I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time in Europe, but one country I've never been to is Luxembourg. So I'm headed there to visit its capital, Luxembourg City, and see what it's all about. My trip started out strong since I got to spend my Copenhagen layover in the SAS lounge. I don't usually go to airport lounges, so it was a nice little perk after a long flight. But after another quick flight, I landed in Luxembourg and was ready to start exploring. My first stop was at the hotel to drop off my bags. I stayed in a nice little hotel right near the central train station, which was a pretty great location for me. Some of the stuff I'd read online said that the area could get a little bit sketchy since it's Luxembourg's red light district. But honestly, it's Luxembourg, so it wasn't bad at all. It seemed perfectly clean and safe to me, and no more beggars or down-on-their-luck people than anywhere else in town. And it's definitely not like Amsterdam's red light district. If no one told you, other than a couple of adult businesses, it looked pretty much identical to the rest of Luxembourg City. So if you spend a lot of time visiting big cities, it's going to seem pretty normal to you. My strategy to fight off jet lag is to just get out in the city and walk around. I find if I'm up and walking, it's easier for me to forget how tired I actually am. Most of the afternoon I was just wandering the streets of Luxembourg City, figuring out where all the best spots were. But on my drive in from the airport, I saw out the window that there was a big fair in town. So of course, I had to check it out to see what all the excitement was about. It turned out it wasn't just any fair. It was Schueberfouer, a fair that's been running since the 1300s. Yeah, that's a pretty old fair. It was on a parking lot near the city center, so they packed a lot into a pretty small space. There was all the stuff you'd expect. Music playing everywhere, tons of rides spinning people around, people trying to win prizes at carnival games, and lots of food options. I grabbed a local Luxembourg favorite, a spiced potato pancake served with applesauce. It was some tasty fried goodness and a great handheld snack for wandering around a fair. After that, I figured that I should probably go on one of the rides. So I decided to get the best possible view of the fair and took a ride on the big Ferris Wheel. Not nearly as fast and exciting as most of the other rides there, but it gave me a pretty great aerial view of the fairground and the nearby areas of Luxembourg City. Just a nice scenic view of all the fun going on down below me. And there was definitely no shortage of bars and drink stands and beer tents all over the fairgrounds. There were pretty big crowds at all of them, so plenty of places to grab a drink and have a good time. I'd never been to a European fair before, but it reminded me a lot of the ones I'd been to back in North America. And like any good fair, the best way to see all the flashing lights and sounds is at night. As the sun started to go down, the fair got a lot busier. One of the things I noticed as I was walking around was the swinging grills they used at a bunch of the food spots. Seeing the food swinging around got me hungry, so I tried one of the smoked sausages from one of the stands. I had a great time just wandering around the fairground, seeing all the lights and sounds and fun and excitement. It was definitely a great way to fight off jet lag and get a little taste of Luxembourg culture. When you have rides spinning around you and the sounds of people playing carnival games and giant light-up clowns looking down at you, it's easy to stay awake. But before I left, I made sure to get one of the big heart-shaped gingerbread cookies they sold there. I remember seeing cookies like that at Oktoberfest in Munich, so I guess they must be popular at festivals in this part of Europe. I probably look kind of silly as a grown man with a cookie that says I love you in German, but hey, I'm on vacation. But the jet lag was finally catching up to me, so I walked back to my hotel and went right to bed. When I woke up on day 2, I was full of energy and ready to see more of Luxembourg City. What I like the most about it is that it's an old fortress city. As I wandered around town, there were just so many signs of the old fortress. It was really cool. The center of the fortress is Ville Haute, the high city. It's up on a hill, which makes for a pretty impressive spot to put a fortress. But when you're walking around inside, it's easy to forget you're up on a hill surrounded by walls. The main tourist square is Place d'Armes. Always lots of people wandering around there, and it's surrounded on every side by tourist shops and restaurants. But the thing I thought was really cool about it was that there always seemed to be live music being played at the center of the square. One thing that caught my eye in Ville Haute was the Golden Lady statue up on the Monument of Remembrance. It was made to honor the people of Luxembourg who fought the Nazis in World War I. But when the Nazis occupied the city in World War II, they tore down the monument. As the story goes, some Luxembourgers were able to save the Golden Lady from the Germans and hide her, but then everyone forgot where they put her. It wasn't until the 1980s when they found her hidden in the National Football Stadium and they were able to rebuild the monument. Pretty crazy story, isn't it? The Golden Lady is really close to Notre-Dame Cathedral, so I popped in there for a quick look around. I seem to go to an old church or two in every European city, but what I found really weird about this one was how empty it was. Usually big Catholic cathedrals have busloads of people in them, but I think there were only 4 of us in the entire church. I didn't really expect to have the whole place to myself. Another really interesting thing about Luxembourg was how many languages everyone spoke. To start, there's a national language, Luxembourgish, but then later in school, students usually learn French and German, which makes sense considering the countries that border Luxembourg. And then, because 3 languages just isn't enough, a lot of people learn English too. But the thing that really surprised me was that most of the signs were in French, and in nearly every store or restaurant I was greeted in French. I just assumed it would be Luxembourgish, but I guess French is just more popular now. So I kept walking around Ville Haute and came to the Grand Ducal Palace. Unfortunately, you can only go inside it a few months out of the year since it's the official residence of the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, and I missed it by a few weeks. I made a quick stop at St. Michael's Church since it's an old church that was originally built in the 900s. It's been rebuilt quite a few times over the years, so the current layout is a lot more modern than that. But my next stop was something I was really looking forward to, the Casemates du Bock. One of the defenses that the Fortress of Luxembourg had was a huge network of tunnels built right into the rock. They have a portion of them open so you can go down and explore. It's really cool down there. You're surrounded by rock on all sides, and then they have these little rooms where the cannons would go with openings to the outside. It's like you're looking out the window of a castle that's built into a mountain. And you get some great views of the rest of the city from in there. I'd love just wandering around the maze of tiny tunnels and ending up in weird little rooms and dead ends. This is a spot that's definitely worth checking out if you visit. After all that tunnel exploring, I was ready for a nice Luxembourgish dinner. One thing I found was that all the Luxembourgish dishes I had were really hearty and huge portions. I never went hungry when I ate local food on my visit. After a little more time wandering around the city, I was back at my hotel and ready to sleep. Yesterday was all about Ville Haute, but today I wanted to get outside the fortress walls and see some of the lower city neighborhoods. I'd seen some of them as I looked over the edge of Ville Haute, and they looked really nice, but I figured I should go see them up close. It made for a pretty nice walk down with the steep roads, buildings that look like they're built right into the hill, and the gates that you need to pass through as you leave the fortress. I started off down in the Grund neighborhood right at the base of the hill. It's a pretty nice spot with the Alzette River running through it. But my favorite part of Grund was the amazing views it gives you of Luxembourg City. It's one thing to look down on them from the top of the fortress walls, but you really see how amazing they are when you're on the road looking straight up at them towering over top of you. I started following a marked historic walking path that gave me even more great views of Luxembourg. It took me along some older, smaller city walls that must have been used to protect the lower city areas. And there were some small hills with overlooks that gave the most complete view of the Luxembourg City fortress. From here, I could see the entire fortress at once, almost like what you'd expect on a postcard. But one of the best things was getting to see the casemates from the outside. It really shows you how rocky it is from the outside, and I could see all of the little windows that I was looking out yesterday. There's a tiny little stone path you can walk along at the base of the wall, and then look up to see the rocky wall sticking straight up over your head. I would have felt pretty safe living in Luxembourg with all these massive walls protecting me. But if you're down in Grund and don't feel like walking back up, don't worry. They have a free elevator that you can ride back up to Ville Haute. After a quick lunch, I went over to the next neighborhood I wanted to see, Kirchberg. On its surface, it seems a little bland since it's mostly filled with big offices and European Union buildings. But there were actually a few fun things hidden away there. The first thing I checked out was the MUDAM Museum of Modern Art. The ceilings are nearly completely glass, so the whole museum was filled with natural light. Next door is Fort Thungen with gold and acorns on top each of its towers. If you climb up to the roof of the fort, you get a great view of the MUDAM with all of its windows. Or if you look in the other direction, you can see the fort's moat, bridge, and Ville Haute off in the distance. And of course, not too far away, you have even more of Luxembourg's old city walls. You really can't go anywhere in the city without seeing old walls or fortifications, so if you like that kind of stuff, you'll be in heaven. Plus, there were a couple more spots to look down on Luxembourg and get a different view of the city. I went for a downhill walk and made my way to another lower city neighborhood, Pfaffenthal. Just like Grund, it almost feels like a tiny village hidden away down there. It was so much quieter with all the little riverfront houses and small pedestrian bridges. But if you look up, you can see one of the huge bridges connecting the higher up neighborhoods together. Grund has a nice elevator, but Pfaffenthal definitely has them beat. It's completely glass, so as you ride up, you can see the entire neighborhood slowly sinking away under you. I keep saying this, but Luxembourg City has so many great scenic spots. Lots and lots and lots of places to take great pictures. I finished the night off with another great Luxembourgish meal and then back to my hotel. When I woke up on day 4, I wanted to make the most of my last day in the city. So I started off in Ville Haute, spending a little more time wandering the streets. The first thing I came across was a local farmer's market, so I spent some time looking at some of the local Luxembourg produce. But pretty soon after that, the rain started coming down. A bit of a letdown, but a little rain wasn't going to stop me. I only had a few hours left in Luxembourg, and there'd be plenty of time to dry off on my way out of town. There was one more lower city neighborhood I wanted to check out, so I took myself through some tiny stone pathways to Clausen. This area was really packed with bars and restaurants. I wish I had come here on one of the other days, since it was mostly empty in the morning with all of the rain. So I spent some more time walking around the lower city and slowly made my way back up to the train station. It was time to say goodbye to Luxembourg City after a few really fun days. Honestly, Luxembourg isn't a place you hear about a lot in North America. It's a pretty small country and doesn't have the same marketing or name recognition as other places in Europe. So I don't often hear about people going there for a visit. But I'm really glad I went. I had an amazing time. There were old city walls and fortifications everywhere I went, and they were a lot of fun to explore. Getting to wander between high city and low city was great and gave some spectacular views. And the city wasn't as overpowered with tourists as some other European spots. I didn't know what to expect coming into this trip, but now that I've been, I'll definitely recommend that my friends stop and visit Luxembourg City. If you have any questions about Luxembourg City, ask me in the comments. And don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. On Instagram, I'm Firsthand Globetrotting. On Twitter, I'm Firsthand Globe. Follow me on there. And don't forget, it's an incredible world out there, so pick up your passport and do some firsthand globetrotting of your own.